enemy. He always calls everybody Nazis. I mean, that's his whole impetus for invading Ukraine was he was going to eliminate the Nazis.
Well, here, actually, I still got the article up. It's actually from Workers World. Workers.org.
Oh, hang on a second. I discovered something. I'll get back to your topic in a second here because I brought it up. Last night, I was just bored at work, going through some stuff on the internet. There's a website out there that has me with my contact information listed as a CIA agent for Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah,
a CIA asset in Saudi Arabia, and I'm asset number 495. There's like 494 people before me, and I'm it's my old phone number. It's from 2018, and an old email address from 2018, and back in 2018, I was working where I'm working now, and I got an email from the security manager for the contract I work for saying your clearance is under investigation. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? What did I do that's causing this? And they couldn't tell me. And I fucking went all out, and I filed a Freedom of Information Act, and I went back and forth with what's the entity that handles clearance called? I can't remember. The OPM, Office of Personnel Management, for like a month, demanding to know what this was about. And eventually they just dropped it and would never give me an explanation. They just completely dropped whatever it was that flagged on my clearance. And it coincides with whatever this fucking website is that shows me as a CIA asset. First of all, my paycheck never reflected that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, plus, I don't think a CIA employee in Saudi Arabia might make sense as a white American, but a CIA asset would most likely be a Saudi Arabian person, right?
Well, yeah, and it had me listed as working for the Saudi military. What? Jesus Christ.
I don't know how that could even happen. That's strange.
That's fucking bizarre. And so I started looking at the other names on there, and they're people from Pakistan, they're from Saudi Arabia. There's a couple other American email addresses and names. And I'm tempted to email some of these people to say, hey, do you know you're on this list? And what does this mean to you? But anyway, so Workers World is what you came across for Navalny.
Yeah, it says he's on the payroll of the United States and Great Britain. So I don't know. I don't know how trustworthy that is. I didn't dive it that far into it. But they call him an ultra-nationalist.
Ultra-nationalist
and I
Russian.
guess he got $3 million or millions of dollars from the United States, Great Britain, and Germany.
But he's a Russian. He's Russian.
Yeah. Yes.
Your feed just froze. Are you hearing me? Wait, hang on.
Eat my mouse while it's in my hand.
What
else does it say?
Well, hang on, dude, because your video is frozen in the podcast app. Okay, now you're back to normal. Okay, carry on.
I see myself moving on it.
Now you are, yeah, but you were frozen before.
Maybe it does that when I go into another page.
Yeah, you're frozen again.
It says he's a well-known racist and that he... All right, apparently I can't read articles while I'm in here. Doesn't like being put in the background, I guess.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it says he participated in a bunch of anti-immigrant marches and racist marches in Russia. I don't know if it's true or not. Just that's what it says. But I saw a TikTok about it first where somebody said that. So I figured I'd mention it just in case it's true. We don't want to, put him on too much of a pedestal if that's true.
Yeah, and
all I know about him, he was anti-Putin, and Putin's a fuckface. So I liked his anti-Putin stuff. But if he's also, anti-immigrant and most countries that are homogeneous are anti-immigrant. I lived in South Korea for several years, and they're pretty racist there too.
But Russia
just
is
because,
not. But Russia is not homogenous in that way. Russia has the
well, they have
variety.
a big indigenous population. Plus, yeah, plus as far as the Soviet Union grew it, they got lots of different cultures in there.
Well, what I'm confused about is, and I don't know if it's just the semantics of the word nationalist as it applies to what's being implied about Navalny being a nationalist. But it seems to me that Putin is a Russian nationalist. Am I
Well, yeah,
wrong?
for sure.
So it seems like they would have aligned on that, though Putin's not going to align with anybody who's challenging him for power. But yeah, I had never put him on any kind of pedestal. I was always kind of like, yeah, this is all very, very weird. We're already recording, by the way, just in case I missed something.
I
And
know. I'm bringing my docs up on my phone so I don't have to switch and stutter. Apparently, there's an app for docs. Maybe I should get that someday.
an app for what?
Google Docs.
Oh,
When I opened it up, it tried to get me on the download the app.
well, yeah. There's an app for Google. Your relationship with the Google ecosphere is so weird because you exist in the Apple ecosphere, which you shouldn't be. It's an awful place to be. But we can get
Well,
into
then buy me a new phone.
that. We can get into that later. Apple is a horrible fucking thing.
All right.
Everything works better on Android.
Look, I'm not an Apple anything but phones. I'm all Windows computers and everything. I've never owned a Mac. Well, actually, that's not true. I grew up on a Macintosh. My parents were Apple people, and we had several. Well, I had an Apple IIe was my first computer, and then
Holy shit, that's a long time ago.
yeah, and then a succession of Macintoshes. But the first computer I ever bought for myself was a Windows computer. Of course, that's after being in the Army, which uses all Windows stuff. Actually, we used Unix based systems mostly for
Yeah.
our work, but we had Windows computers too that we played Quake on during lunchtime. I loved my first Commander.
So
It's
we
lunchtime. I'll buy lunch for everybody if you stay here and play Quake with me. Shout out to Chief Caston if you're still out there somewhere.
the majority of the Air Force's cloud computing stuff migrated over to Microsoft a couple of years ago when Microsoft won the big contract, and that got challenged by Jeff Bezos with his Amazon cloud stuff. But when Microsoft's cloud computing system runs more than 50% on Linux servers. So there's something to be said for Linux across the board. Not even Microsoft relies completely on their own server operating system because Linux is just better.
Yeah. I do have some Linux distributions that I can run on some of my computers when I want to,
Hmm.
but I don't really do much of that anymore. I used to have a system administrator certificate for Unix for Sun Solaris specifically
Holy shit.
back in the day.
Yeah,
I wish I kept up on that. There's probably good money in that.
there is. We got positions open for it all the time.
I don't know how many versions ago that was.
Quite a few.
But
So let's just take these things in the order that we have them on the outline.
all right, we'll talk about the Alabama IVF ruling. That was ridiculous. So you can't have embryos now because they're for in vitro fertilization because they're children, which is insane. That just makes no sense whatsoever.
I was reading some of the opinions by the Alabama Supreme Court justices that were part of that ruling, and the number of references
To
to
God,
yes,
the Bible.
and the
Yeah, I read
Bible
that
and
too.
all this other bullshit, just like holy fuck.
Yeah, you're the fucking Supreme Court. You're supposed to look at the law, not the fucking Bible, you idiots.
Alabama's in a bad place and just as bad as Oklahoma's in. But the it didn't take 24 hours, I think, for the University of Alabama to completely suspend their in vitro fertilization program.
Yeah, and hospitals aren't doing IVF treatments anymore in Alabama,
Yeah,
and
they gave
you know
the
what's going to happen to all those embryos that were scheduled to be implanted in IVF facilities? They're going to get flushed.
well.
Way to save those children, Supreme Court of Alabama.
Well, I don't think so, because that's the part that they're afraid of. Because if they do that and this ruling is in effect, has it been signed by the governor, or does it need to be?
It doesn't need to be.
It's not a
This was
bill;
the
it's just a
Supreme Court
ruling.
ruling
Yeah,
that an existing law applied to embryos in IVF
yeah.
facilities.
There's no way they're going to flush those embryos, because that puts them to be criminally liable.
So they're just going to be frozen forever?
Well, now in going in and reading the judgment, it also talked about, it like went into the minutia of what the processes need to be for in vitro fertilization, and one of them was they can only fertilize one egg, and they have to implant that egg in the woman's uterus and wait to see if it fails. And if it fails, they go back and they pull another egg and they fertilize that egg, then they implant that egg. So they do this as many times as it takes. Do you know the fucking toll that takes on a family, on a woman?
Yep. Plus, they fail more often than not. That's why they usually do a
Exactly.
bunch of them at once.
Exactly. And the absolute, it's torture. It's fucking definition torture that they're going to put families through. They're simply not going to opt for it. I don't see any, and forget about the
Or they'll do
cost.
it in other states. They'll
Yeah.
travel.
Yeah, the cost is with those new processes, it's cost prohibitive and nobody can afford to do it. The yeah, I saw that the Biden administration criticized it, but is DOJ going to challenge this in the federal Supreme Court? And does that even? I mean, yeah, it could be, right? No, it'd have to go to the Circuit Court of Appeals, right?
First, yeah, but it could it'll. I mean, then Alabama can appeal it again. It'll eventually end up on the Supreme Court.
I haven't seen any news about any entity taking the wheel in terms of challenging that and filing an appeal.
Well, some reporter asked Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville what his thoughts were on the ruling, and it was clear that he had no idea what it was about. Didn't know the ruling had happened, knew nothing. Because all he kept saying is, we need more kids. I like IVF because it makes more kids, and we need more kids to be born. That was his answer. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? And he's a senator, and he doesn't know what's happening in his own state. Alabamans, you voted for a fucking moron, and he's not representing you because he doesn't even have any idea what's going on in Alabama. He's just up there doing the cocaine orgies with the Republicans up in Washington.
Fuck.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. So I guess we'll wait and see who's going to file an appeal on this and how quickly it's going to move.
Yeah.
But
or what will the Alabama voters have anything to say about it at some point? Will they care enough about it to elect different people to change the law so that the law that the Supreme Court just ruled applies to IVF embryos no longer applies to anyone?
But is that even, are the mechanics of that even a possibility, that you simply introduce legislation that somehow overrules a law that's been put in place by the judiciary?
Yeah, that's 100% how it works. The judiciary doesn't make laws, they interpret laws.
True.
So there was a law that already existed, and the Supreme Court of Alabama ruled that law, the rule applied to children, actual children, originally. And the Supreme Court of Alabama ruled that the law also applies to IVF embryos because they are, in fact, children. So the legislature can go back, they can get rid of that law altogether, or they can they could reword the law to specifically exclude IVF embryos if they wanted to.
So they brought a nationwide ban on abortion through the Senate, then that's it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I got you. Okay, so as we wait and see, I'm looking at to see if Alabama's a Republican supermajority or just a simple majority. Well, they control the whole fucking shebang, so
Yeah, and they will. But I mean, not every Republican that they can vote for probably would support that ruling. So they can probably vote for different Republicans that would change the law. Or maybe the Republicans in there, they'll put pressure on the Republicans that are already there to change the law so that that's not a thing anymore. I don't know. Who knows?
yeah.
I'm thankful I don't live in Alabama.
All the Democrats did the opposite, and that's the law of the land. What? Okay. I'm not sure what that means. Clarify that, Fowley64. All the Democrats did the opposite, and that's the law of the land. It's in the TikTok live.
Yeah, I'm not in there.
I figured you were. I'm not just sitting here talking to somebody that's in my bedroom. No,
Yeah, I know. You told me you were going to do it. I didn't feel like getting on TikTok today.
that's fine. Piggybacking right off of this, let's just scooch over to Oklahoma.
All right.
I don't know that we're ever going to get a clear, reliable answer for a number of reasons on what happened to Nex Benedict. Here comes the feedback.
It is clear they were beaten to death in the bathroom.
I think it's
what's clear.
Yeah, any reasonable-minded person sees that for what it is. But the fact that Nex was a minor means that any information that we're going to get from this, from the full autopsy and whatever else might come from that, would have to come from his mother, and we have to respect her right to privacy. And I think it's I don't know. The thing that shook me the most was this morning I heard the recording of several representatives from Oklahoma. Tom Woods is the one in particular who struck a nerve with me. He's 28 years old. He's a member of the Oklahoma National Guard, and he openly referred to Nex Benedict as filth. And I hadn't even had my second cup of coffee when I heard that this morning. And the confidence with which, and it was a live mic, and he knew he was being recorded. The confidence with which he made that statement just turned my fucking stomach. But he piggybacked that off of the fact that I represent a constituency of Republicans, and we are a Republican supermajority, and we don't want that filth in our state. I don't know. How do you make that statement? It's just.
I don't even know what to say. I really don't, because I know they're not planning on calling it a hate crime. I know the police publicly stated that it's not a hate crime, just a regular crime. Okay. I don't know. My heart is broken for Nex and their family. I just don't know what to say about it.
Did you see the body cam footage of the school official while they were interviewing him in the hospital, or interviewing Nex in the hospital?
I did not.
With the mother sitting next to the bed, and I think the question was posed to Nex, what precipitated this, or what could have, and the statement was made that these girls have been antagonizing Nex based on the way they dress.
Mm-hmm.
And I think then the preliminary report came out from the medical examiner that the death was not the result of any trauma. And there's a physician that I follow on TikTok. His name's Eric. I can't remember his last name. Dr. Eric, I think he calls himself. And
I follow Dr. Eric.
Yeah, and he was talking about how in the case of a head trauma like that, you're not going to see anything unusual, unless you see like a skull fracture with a piece of bone jutting through the brain, you're not going to see anything that would look extraordinary. And yet this medical examiner was able to, in no time at all, make this statement. And the mother, I think, has contested that statement already. She was very quick to argue that conclusion already being thrown out there.
Yeah, it's almost like anytime anything happens in a state that's as Republican as Alabama, it's almost like you need the feds or another state to come in and investigate it, because you never know.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in power there is complicit in covering up crimes when they are if they're against the right kind of people in their mind, you know?
Yeah, I don't see how the federal government stays out of this one and doesn't appoint somebody at the DOJ to investigate how this has been handled, what the events leading up to it were, and how it's handled from here forward. Because we can't trust the information coming out of that state, not at all. It's fucking awful on every level.
It is, and it's happened before. It's going to happen again.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, so here's the first thing that was on our bingo card when you asked what we were going to be talking about this week. When you tried to predict last week, this is the first thing. There was actually a primary in South Carolina. I didn't realize they voted on Saturdays. That's weird to me. Every state I've ever lived in always votes on Tuesday, but I don't know. Voting on Saturday seems good. Less people are working, more people can vote.
Yeah.
But Trump won again, and Haley decided not to quit, even though that's her home state, and she got blown out. Although she did win one district, and I guess they split up their delegates by district, so she has her first delegates of the primary. But it's like 3, and you need like 1,500 or something to get the nomination. So she's got a long hill to climb.
And I saw her statement is that she has a duty to stay in the race regardless of.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't say anything that's really out of line, but she's wasting her donors' money at this point. I don't blame her. She can do what she wants. I don't really care. I don't want her to be president anymore, and I want Trump or, quite frankly, Biden to be president. I don't want anyone who's running for president currently to be president. But
Same.
What are you gonna do?
And then you saw Trump's speech that he made the other day to I think it's the Black Conservative Coalition, where he's at the podium. Yeah. And he's saying the lights are so bright I can only see the black people in the audience.
Yes, I saw that.
There's another creator on here. I can't think of his name. I've been following him for years. Crown of the Fold was his old TikTok name. He's a pretty controversial creator. He's a black gentleman, and he was pointing out, because one of his followers said, "Boy, I'd like to see who was in that audience when Trump made that statement." And lo and behold, there was footage of what that audience looked like. And so as these people were cheering him saying this, somebody turned their cell phone camera to look at the audience. And what do you think the audience for the Black Conservative Coalition was comprised of?
I know it was mostly white people, but
fucking
were there any
white
black people? Were there any black people at all?
Like the vast majority, like single digits in the entire fucking room. And most of them were standing up there on the stage with Trump. There was like 3 or 4 people on the stage who, the 3 or 4 of those were black, but the audience was all fucking white people. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's getting worse every fucking day. That's going to be on my epitaph.
The third member of our podcast, man, he just doesn't want to leave me alone.
He's a good dog. You're not a good dog. My dog's right behind me. I'm looking at the outline here. Okay, let's talk about the Biden administration again vetoing a call for Israel to end its genocide.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of Gaza stuff. Number 5 is long, all Gaza stuff. So yeah, there was a for the third time, the United Nations Security Council had a proposal. I forget which country introduced it, to call for a ceasefire and the release of all hostages from both sides. And 14 countries voted yay. One country voted no. And because that one country was the United States, which is one of the 5 permanent members with absolute veto power, once again, that's happened 3 times. And actually, I said 14 countries voted yay, but I don't think that's true. I think Russia and maybe, I don't know, some countries abstained. But we vetoed it, and that is at the direction of the president. How they vote, how we vote in the UN is at the direction of the president. So that is 100% Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. That does not want a ceasefire, does not want the hostages returned, wants to just let Netanyahu continue his rampage.
It's hard for me to believe that there are any, I don't know what the numbers are anymore of the Israelis that are being held in Gaza. It's hard for me to believe that any of them are alive anymore. And I think that's how Israel would prefer it to be.
Right. 100%. 100%.
So that gives Hamas no negotiating power. There was I think he was a member of the UN. I think he was from Belgium. I can't remember. The clip has been circulating widely for the past few days, where he's talking about Hamas is not a terrorist group for us. Hamas is a opposition group to an illegal occupation, and this pissed a lot of people off, apparently, because the United States is the one who gets to hang this label on whoever they choose to determine that somebody is a terrorist. It's the whole fucking term needs to go to hell. The whole.
Now, what are we when we drop bombs everywhere? You know, because we've done that several times in my lifetime.
I've put that out there, what the United States FBI definition of terrorist and terrorism is, and you can go fucking word by word, and everything that we've done for nation building, regime change, bullying other countries, overturning elections, the shit that we do is by the US's definition terrorism. Do you
remember when Clinton was president and we launched a cruise missile and blew up a hospital in Africa somewhere where we weren't even engaged in any conflict with them whatsoever, and we just blew up a hospital? Mm-hmm. I haven't thought about that in a long time. It just popped in my head, and now I'd like to do a deep dive and figure out how that happened and why that happened.
Wasn't it an
And why didn't we face consequences for that?
From who? Well,
I don't know. The United Nations.
Oh, okay. But we are the United Nations. That's the thing. Is this the United Nations has, and it's funny because I remember during, when was it? It might have been one of the Bush's administrations where the Republicans demonized the United Nations as being pointless and helpless and ineffectual and useless. And they weren't wrong in that regard, because everything about the United Nations doesn't function according to whatever the will of these other nations are. It's whatever we want is what gets done in the United Nations.
I mean, the Security Council works that way, but the United Nations as a whole does work by majority rule when it's on civil matters. So stuff gets done that we vote against all the time. But yeah, you're right. The Security Council, and that's because of the 5 countries that have permanent vetoes. China, France, United Kingdom, Russia, United States. China, France, United Kingdom. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how the idea of the permanent vetoes came to be, or how that would.
It was the 5 countries that had nuclear weapons when the United Nations were founded.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly how it came to be.
Huh.
The 5 countries that had the weaponry to blow up the entire planet, like, we're gonna get permanent veto on the Security Council, so you can't tell us what to do.
And I know you've seen her posts. You follow Emma on TikTok. the young woman who is like a nuclear disarmament specialist.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I've learned so much from watching her content regarding how any nation possessing nuclear weapons is illegal by their own, by the definitions of those countries. And I always I'm just blown away by it. It's fucking insane.
Yes. I would prefer to live in a world without nuclear weapons, but we don't, and we won't. In
Your
fact, there's more and more countries are going to get them. I mean, it is 99% certain that North Korea has a weaponable nuke now. I mean, we know they've detonated nukes for testing, but 99% certain they have one that they can put on a rocket and shoot somewhere. So that's a new country that didn't have nukes a decade ago, and now they do. And considering what's going on in the Middle East right now, I don't see how Iran doesn't restart their nuclear weapons program at this point. I really don't. And if they haven't already, maybe they have. But we gave them a bunch of money to shut down their nuclear program. I don't see how they don't say fuck that. We need nukes. Because we know, I mean, Israel has nukes, not officially, but they do.
Well, Israel is an existential threat to Iran. That reason alone is enough to, if we're going to legitimize nuclear weapons again in the conversation, which takes it 180 degrees from the fact that owning them is illegal.
I'm not advocating for anyone to have nukes. I'm just saying this is reality, the reality we live in.
Yeah. There's no question that it was inevitable that we would be at this place. Did you watch the Oppenheimer movie?
Yes.
Okay, there was the scene where he was talking to Einstein about the fear that they would ignite the atmosphere and start a chain reaction that couldn't be stopped. And when that didn't happen, they still realized that, yes, it did happen. They started a chain reaction that cannot be stopped, and that's what has us where we are today.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was ever an opportunity for nuclear weapons to ever not be a reality and a card on the table. It's just there would be no stopping it, because the advancements of just nuclear energy alone, just understanding the atom and how that could have been translated into a beneficial use for mankind for producing energy and so forth. The logical jump from that was to weaponize it, and I don't think it went in that direction. I think the first use of nuclear power was for a bomb, not for nuclear energy. But even if the first use was nuclear energy, the next logical step would have been a weapon. There was no stopping it. And so how do you put the cat back in the bag? I don't think you can.
No, you can't. And I honestly, I don't see how we restrict it so that all the nuclear bombs that have ever been used are the only ones that will ever be used. It's only a matter of time before somebody uses one.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time. I don't know. Pakistan and India are both nuclear armed, and they don't like each other at all.
Yep.
I don't know how long that can go before somebody decides to use one.
Well, yeah, and both countries are.
Is Pakistan friendly enough with Iran and the other Arab countries to back them up against Israel with their nuclear weapons? I don't know. But yeah, God damn, this podcast is depressing as fuck.
It really is. I mean, it's not like we ain't making shit up here. This is what's going on.
No, this is reality. This is our world.
Back to the Pakistan-India thing, both countries are run and heavily populated by religious zealots.
Yeah.
And you're having to rely on cooler heads to avert disaster, and I think pound for pound you're going to have fewer cooler heads available in countries that are replete with religious zealots,
especially as climate change gets worse and countries start fighting over things like water, which is going to happen.
Oh yeah.
In fact, it's in the news today that Mexico City, one of the largest cities in the world, may be months away. They don't define what that means, but months. They didn't say years, months away from running out of water.
Really?
Yep. And it's not all because of climate change. It's also because of poor infrastructure, and because the city was designed, it's all paved. There's no permeable land to get the water back into the ground anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something that could be done about it. Not in months though. It can't be done in months.
Well, yeah,
but I guess they already are trucking in a lot of the water they have. And there were some quotes from a resident that says he has a trickle from his faucet all the time, but every now and then it'll be a stream, and he can then take a shower and stuff.
And
This is in a modern city.
Well, in
It's a modern city.
Mexico City is one of the most densely populated cities on the planet, too.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, but someday, I mean, if Mexico doesn't have access to water, and California does, what's Mexico going to do? Just die of dehydration? No, they're gonna
fight.
You're gonna have to fight.
Yeah.
And that's an example, but it could happen anywhere in the world. Fighting over resources is going to happen more in the future. And when it's nuclear countries doing it, that's scary.
Yeah. And okay, let's jump back real quick over to the Israeli thing, because I saw a clip this morning that said the Biden administration had declared Israeli settlements in the occupied territories to be illegal. Okay. I haven't verified that they've made this statement, and that is their position. If it is,
but even if you did, I've heard that statement be made before.
Yeah, so have I.
But Israel's never shut down one settlement. Yeah. Never. So just declaring it doesn't mean anything. True. You gotta tell them you got to get your settlements the fuck out of there.
Yeah, so we'll wait and see if anything comes of that. Tell me, you've got the thing on there about the active duty Air Force member? I hadn't heard this either.
Yeah, so this just happened today. So it's breaking news. I saw it first on Twitter, but then I did find photos of it. So it definitely happened. I don't know that it's not confirmed that he was an active duty Air Force member, but he was wearing an Air Force uniform. And apparently he walked in front of the Israeli embassy today and yelled, "I will no longer be complicit in this genocide," then lit himself on fire. And while he was burning, he was screaming "Free Palestine." And I don't know if he died. Couldn't find that.
Yeah, he's in critical condition, according to what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's breaking news. You might have heard it here first. Well, probably not, because we're not going to post this right away. But
yeah, he may not make it, according to what I'm reading.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say about that. I mean, it's nice that somebody wants to stand up for somebody on active duty military wants to stand up against the genocide, but lighting yourself on fire will definitely bring attention to it, but you're also going to kill yourself. And I don't know if that's a way to go necessarily, but.
Well, I'm looking at the news sources that are coming back. The only notable news source that's covering a lot of the other ones are just fly-by-night news sources. Washington Post. Nobody else is really covering it.
Yeah.
It did happen. It's a real thing. It's an important thing to talk about. It should be. If this guy dies and nobody knows about it, that's a fucking shame.
Yeah.
All right.
So what you're looking at now, does it confirm that he is an active duty Air Force guy?
It's not. It's still saying that he claimed he was, and he was wearing a Air Force uniform. They're not saying. If his name was in there, I could go into the Air Force Gal and tell you in a minute if he was, but no name as of yet. Oh, Jesus Christ.
All right. Also, I would just like to say, because I want to tie these two things together, and then I have a statement. There was a very large protest in Tel Aviv yesterday. So these are Israelis protesting Israel's genocide in Gaza, and there's video of it. There were thousands of them. It was multiple protests that started in different places and eventually combined together. One of the protests specifically was family members of hostages, and they're protesting Netanyahu and his handling of this whole situation because they all know that Hamas has offered to release all the hostages if you just stop killing us, and they say no. So that's what they're protesting. But it ended up being very big. It was very peaceful. People had flags. You can watch video of it. People had flags. They were chanting. People were giving speeches. And then the police showed up and just started beating everybody. And there's video of that too. So, yeah, that's what happens in fascist countries. Israel is, in fact, a fascist country.
I don't know how the election cycle works in Israel, and I don't know how Netanyahu survives this politically. I'm going to look this up after we're done today and find out when the next election that he would have to defend his seat on is happening. But I can't imagine that he survives this politically. This has to be the end of his political career. I mean, that doesn't change anything. I don't think that means that Israel's going to withdraw back to the 1967 borders. They're going to start treating Palestinians as equals and so on and so forth. I think even without Netanyahu, it's a stretch to think that Zionist Israel is going to treat Palestinians significantly differently. But I don't see how Netanyahu survives this, and his Likud party, the whole fucking 9 yards.
Yeah, well, they already were. He already was extremely unpopular for the changes to the Constitution that he put in, that removed the judiciary from oversight of the executive branch. There were protests about that. That was several months ago, maybe even a year ago. It was definitely before this Gaza thing, at any rate. But Netanyahu was very unpopular for that.
Did that come because, remember, he had been investigated and charged, or he or his wife was charged with corruption and taking bribes or something. I wonder if it came before his changes to the Constitution that apparently he can make unilaterally as prime minister.
Yeah, I didn't research this for this episode. Just can't pop in my head. I don't really remember. I just remember seeing the protests when it was happening, which was quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Young people in particular were upset about it. And it was all, I don't remember the mechanisms that he was using to do it. I just know the end result was he was separating the executive branch removing the executive branch from the oversight of the judicial branch. So essentially, he could do whatever the fuck he wants. Kind of like Trump wants to do.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
The entire way that the Knesset operates is not understood by me, and I see it as quite bizarre, but it's highly complicated. It's not even our process from every branch of government is highly complicated, but it makes our stuff look very easy and simple to navigate when you look at how the Knesset operates. It's power sharing and things like that are a clusterfuck. What's your issue with the killer whales?
I don't have an issue with the killer whales. I have a mission for them
to
do on our behalf. All right, this is a little lighter. So as you know that there was a few months ago, there was news of orcas sinking ships, right? They were doing that, banging into ships over and over again until they sank. They sank a couple in the Mediterranean Sea, I think. I'm not really sure. But that was in the news a while back. So I got a ship for them to go after. This is yesterday I learned. I did not know this thing existed, but it has existed since 2002, so it's been around for a while. There is a ship called the World, and it's a cruise ship that tours the world. It's been touring the world since 2002, but it's not like a Carnival cruise line where anybody can go on it. you don't rent a cabin, you buy like a condo on the cruise ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's invite only. You have to have a net worth of $10 million to apply. And then they'll fly you out to wherever the ship is if you apply. And you have to meet members on the ship, and then they vote on whether to let you in or not. Whether they want to let you. There was an article in CNN this comes from, but when I Googled it, I found one other article from a few years ago, and there is a Wikipedia page for this. But the CNN article had an interview with a former resident, which was the most information. So, yeah, he said they do all kinds of debauchery and stuff on that ship too, like you would expect, he said. He said he bought his first place. He owned 4 or 5 different places because they're not all the same. There's like studios and then there's larger apartments. He said the first one he bought was $1.4 million. And then the last one he bought was $4 million or something. But he's since divested himself of that because he said he's seen the whole world and he doesn't need to do that anymore. But yeah, I'm just saying, orcas, if you want to go after a ship, just find that ship, take out its keel. Let's send all those rich fuckers to the bottom of the sea.
Yes, please. I'm gonna look this up now. Now my interest.
Yeah, and if you go to the Wikipedia article, you'll also find that there are 3 or 4 more ships like it currently under construction.
And what country of origin do they claim? What flag do they fly?
Fort Lauderdale. It's registered in Fort Lauderdale.
Really?
Yeah. Of
course it is. That's really strange. Because usually these things, they don't choose to be registered in the United States. Their registry is the Bahamas or Scandinavia or something. But yeah, that's fucking wild. Jesus.
So yeah, if the orcas want to help us out, that's a ship for you to go after. It's got a website too. It's called aboardtheworld.com, the world luxury residence at sea, the largest private residential yacht on Earth with 165 residences.
Fucking. This reminds me and brings me back to an article not having to do with it. It punctuates the divide in this country between the haves and the have-nots. But you saw the Kellogg's
yes, oh my
spokesperson,
God.
cereal for dinner.
Not the spokesperson, that was the CEO.
It was the CEO.
Yeah.
And
we're currently starting an advertising campaign encouraging people
building, yeah,
to have cereal for dinner because it's affordable. Fuck you. How about we have CEO for dinner?
The thing that I noticed was that when he was talking, he kept talking about, and pay attention to this now when you hear people like him talking about the financial condition in this country and the economy. When he uses the word consumers, he says, we know that consumers are having a hard time. Let's be clear about something. He does not fall into the category of a consumer. Even though he consumes things and consumes opulence and whatever the fuck rich people do, the term consumers is always referring to the rest of us.
Right.
It's not the rich and powerful and the wealthy, the people who own everything. Even though they are consumers, the word that they use to divide us from them is that it is consumers.
Yep.
Oh.
So yeah, put Kellogg's on your boycott list because fuck that guy.
I know, but
there you go. Asshole of the week, the CEO of Kellogg's.
But you have to go in and look at, okay, you know how there's like 5 conglomerate companies that own every product, right? Like Procter Gamble, and so I need to go in and research who Kellogg's is owned by, who else Kellogg's owns, and hope that I can still buy my food at Aldi's because fuck. Because I bet you they're either a very small fork of a large, unbelievably, disgustingly large company, or the other way around. But Jesus Christ. All right. Any predictions or premonitions about what we might be talking about next week? What's coming
Well,
up
we do have a lot of primaries happening this week coming up,
for the
right?
Republicans? For the Republicans,
Yeah, we
there's
can talk about
essentially
those.
there's no primary going on for the Democrats because we just appoint a king.
Kellogg's is its own company.
Really?
Yeah, it's its own company. It's publicly traded. It does not have an owner.
That's rare.
But Kellogg's owns Eggo, Garden Burger, Pringles, and RX Bar.
That's the whole list?
That's the whole list on Wikipedia.
Huh. Interesting.
Oh no, there's a lot more. All right, Bare Naked, Cheez It, Eggo, Fruit Winders, Fruity Snacks, Morningstar Farms, Club Crackers, Nutrigain, Pop Tarts, Pringles, RX Bar, Sunshine Biscuits, Townhouse,
Fuck.
Zesta Crackers, Cars, CARRS, I don't know what that is. Rice Krispie Treats, Incognito, Joy Bowl, Austin Sandwich Cookies, Cracklin Oat Brand, Garden Burger, Frozen Breakfast, Muslix, Pure Organic Fruit Bars, Toasted Crackers, and Special K. And then all their cereals, All Brand, Apple Jacks, Brand Buds, Brand Flakes, Cinnabon, Cinnamon Mini Buns. Yeah, there's like 1,000 of these.
Yeah, I know.
Fruit Loops, Frosted Flakes, Frosted Mini Wheats.
God damn it. Maybe we need to start paying better attention to these creators that are talking about growing your own food.
Yeah, well, that's illegal where I live. So,
What do you
I mean, I
mean?
can grow it in my house. I don't know how much food you can grow in a 3-bedroom apartment, but
You can't have gardens outside?
no.
What?
There are like 2 community gardens that you can pay to use. There's not one really near me. You cannot have your own.
Oh yeah, potatoes. You can grow like mad potatoes in 5-gallon buckets in your apartment. That works really well.
Yeah, I've grown peppers, like habaneros and jalapenos and serranos. I've grown those before, and I've grown tomatoes before. That's it. I've never grown anything else.
Tomatoes are hard. I mean, tomatoes are probably easier to do inside, but once you're growing them outside, the pests, they gravitate toward tomatoes and just decimate them.
Yeah.
But I've still got some microgreen trays. I've got some microgreen seeds. I could grow sunflowers and mustard and snow peas and shit. But I can't grow a chicken. I can't grow a cow. I mean,
Now, if I lived in the suburbs, there a lot of people have chickens around here in the suburbs. In fact, there's someone that lives near my parents that have they don't have them anymore, but they used to have llamas in their backyard.
for
Yeah,
why?
they just had a fenced in backyard with llamas. Why? I don't know. I never
They
talked
probably
to them. I just would drive by the house.
Well, I'm pretty sure you have to shear them, so they were
Yeah,
probably shearing
they
them to
are
make
wool
money.
producers, so it could have been that, or they might have just liked llamas. I don't know. I've always wanted to have goats. I wouldn't milk them or eat them. I just like them. I think they're cool. I like goats.
Yeah. Well, the pygmy goats, the little ones.
No, I wouldn't want a goat in my little apartment. I would have, if I had land, I would have goats.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Anyway, all right. So we'll keep an eye on things for the next week and come back and share.
Yeah, we'll depress you some more next week with some things that actually happened because
We
this
will
is the world we
share
live in.
the joy. Emu farming. Oh, let me tell you the story. Have I told the story about the emu farm in South Texas? This is
No.
awful. This is a terrible story. So there was a Purina dog factory. They make dogs. Dog food factory in South Texas. It was between Port Isabel and coming around to like Harlingen. So there's this Purina dog food factory. There were some guys who had an emu farm somewhere near there, and they had like hundreds of emus. And something happened where they got an infection where they could not be used for human consumption because they were growing them for meat. And so these farmers got notified that their emus could not be sold as meat, and the only option they had was to sell them to the Purina dog food factory. Now, the problem is that the Purina dog food factory doesn't take livestock and turn it into dog food. They take carcasses. And so apparently the farmer didn't know this as he was bringing these hundreds of emus over to the Purina factory. So he pulled up in these horse trailers with hundreds of emus, and the guys at the Purina factory were like, "No, we can't. We thought they were dead, and we were going to turn them into dog food. No, they're not dead." So they had to strategize, and they decided they would call a bunch of their buddies and have them bring their 12 gauge shotguns, and they turned these hundreds of emus loose in this huge lot, this enclosed lot, and they sat on the fence and started blowing the heads off these emus as they're running around, and they're getting more panicked as they're watching their friends' heads disintegrate. And as you would imagine, when you cut the head off a chicken, they run for quite a while still alive. Same thing is true for fucking emus. So at some point, they had a couple hundred headless emus spurting gallons of blood, running amok in this field until they finally dropped dead. And it was a big news story, and it was it was the worst publicity.
It's probably not supposed to be funny, but it's funny.
It was fucking awful. And the thing I remember most about the Purina,
I'm just thinking of all the blood that would have been in that.
Oh my God, it would have been thousands of gallons. The you sometimes hear about how paper factories, because there's a paper factory up in Galveston, Texas. And if you drive by it when they're making paper, it is the most god awful fucking smell on earth. Dog food factories are far worse. The smell, as I would drive past this on my way to work, was just, the smell is fucking horrible. The smell of the dead emus would have been even worse. But the smell of dog food being made, I don't care what it's being made from, is fucking awful. The only other thing that's as bad as that in that area that I live was cottonseed. So they would process the cotton bales and they'd turn the cotton seeds into cottonseed oil. And the smell of cottonseed oil is fucking sickening. I fucking hated it. Anyway, dead emus, dog food, and stinky paper. That's the end of our podcast.
Thanks for joining us.
So I'm gonna